Also, key in sa comment box. Okay, so once again, welcome back everyone. You are watching the public consultation of RA 11713, Implementing Rules and Regulations, which is also live streamed through Tech Facebook page and DepEd Philippines Facebook page. As I mentioned a while ago, Dr. Felina Espique shared to us the first part of the IRR from Rules 1 to 3, particularly sessions 1 to 9.19. In addition, Dr. Justoni Babia continued the sharing from Rules 3 to 8, specifically sections 10 to 17. So at this point, we will continue the discussion with Rule 9, sections 18 and 19, the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, to be presented to us by the Director 4 of NEAP. So let us give him a virtual clap. Director John Arnold S. Shena. Over to you, Director John.
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone. How's my audio coming along, Don?
Clear po, sir, on my end.
Ay,
Audible
salamat. I
po.
hope you can also hear me clearly. First of all, I'd like to greet all our participants to this public consultation on the development of our implementing rules and regulations of Republic Act 11713, otherwise known as Excellence in Teacher Education Act of 2022. Is that correct? Tama ba? Anyway, ayun, so my part, NEAP, is an integral part of the law precisely because we need to be able to establish the linkage between the pre-service and the in-service. So the National Educators Academy of the Philippines is taking care of the in-service education and training of our teachers. So there are two sections in the law that are provided that are related to NEAP, more specifically for the institutionalization of the National Educators Academy of the Philippines. As a way of background, the National Educators Academy of the Philippines was first established as the National Education Learning Center in 1985. So it's called NEAP then, with three major objectives. The first one is to monitor developments in the field, and implied in that function, in that objective, is to determine the impact of these developments in the field of education. The second objective is to develop the pedagogical, the curricular, pedagogical, and the training components of the school system as informed by these developments that have been monitored by NEAP. And the third one is very specific on the conduct of summer training on innovations in school leadership and management. In 1992, the National Education Learning Center was renamed as the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, which adopted the original mandate of NELP, but added some functions that are pertaining to HR functions like performance evaluation, recruitment, and so on. So in 2015, when we had the adoption of the rationalization program in the Department of Education, the National Educators Academy of the Philippines also went through that process, and instead of taking care of the teachers and school leaders in the Department of Education in relation to their training and development, the NEAP was also in charge of the non-teaching personnel. And then in 2016, when the secretary came, when Secretary Ling came in, she looked, and because of their emphasis on and focus on the pivot to quality education, she looked at the National Educators Academy of the Philippines and what it was doing, and she thought that maybe the NEAP should benefit from the rethinking of in terms of what it should be doing in relation to the professional development of teachers and school leaders. So in 2019, the Department of Education issued DepEd Order number 11 series of 2019 on the transformation of the National Educators Academy of the Philippines to focus more on the professional development of teachers and school leaders. And when we say school leaders, we are referring to not just the leaders in the school heads, but also referring to our supervisors in the district division as well as in the region, and even the third level officials in the field. So that's the coverage of NEAP in terms of clients. And then we had the great opportunity to further institutionalize the National Educators Academy of the Philippines through the passage of RA 11713. And now we are at a point where we are ready crafting the implementing rules and regulations. So this is what my focus will be. I'm very sorry, maybe I hope that my little background will give also some nuance in the way the IRR is also crafted. So sections, so we now sections 18 to section 19 will be included in rule 19 of this IRR. And if may I request Ms. Donna or whoever is in control of the PowerPoint presentation to please proceed to the next one. So I'll just go through the what you call these, the functions of NEAP, and I believe that these are all subject to discussion as well for consideration of the comments and suggestions. Sige, Ms. Donna, or whoever is in charge of the PowerPoint presentation of the slide deck. Can we go to the next slide, please? Hello, Ms. Donna?
Hello, sir. Pakibalik po, sir, yung ating slide. Ang nakalabas po ay 18.1.2 na. Tama po ba, Director John? Is it?
I cannot see it from my end. It's still Rule 19, Section 18 to Section 19. I don't know why.
Okay. Delayed?
Yeah, I don't see my slide is still on the introductory slide, on the Rule 19, Section 18 to Section 19.
Okay po.
Ayan.
Wait lang po, Director.
Rule 19. Ayun na. I said it.
Per minute po. Ayan. Okay po.
Sige. So as I mentioned earlier, we had the privilege of having been included in this law, and in Section 18, instead of just having issuances from the office from the executive, and namely the letter of instruction 1985 by President Marcos, and then in what you call this in 1992, administrative order 282 renaming NELC into NEAP and expanding its functions. Now we are in this by power of this law, we are putting or making the existence of NEAP more durable, so to speak. So Section 18 is the institutionalization of the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, and it has been placed as a component unit of the Department of Education. There was a discussion earlier on whether NEAP would be an attached agency, just like of DepEd, just like TEC. But in the end, NEAP shall be a component unit of the Department of Education, and it shall be headed by the executive director, by an executive director to be appointed by the president upon the recommendation of the secretary of the Department of Education. Unlike in the tech law, where the executive director rank has already been specified, in the case of NEAP, it is very open. It's just executive director, so we don't know how or what rank will be provided, will be given to NEAP. But it is, but because the law is also very specific as to who shall determine the, the rank, and it is the Secretary of Education, then I think we are also giving this particular uh, power and authority to determine that. No? So for purposes of this IRR, the Secretary of DepEd shall determine the appropriate line of management of the academy. Because right now, the National Educators Academy of the Philippines is under the strand of Undersecretary for Human Resource and Organizational Development. In the previous administration, we were under the Office of the Secretary. In fact, even within that administration, we were transferred from governance and operations, and then curriculum and instruction, and then Office of the Secretary. I think the reason was that because the reform initiative is very urgent and will need strong support and strong strong mandate coming from the department. It has to be led by the Office of the Secretary. So for this particular rule, so it is the Secretary who shall determine the appropriate line of management of the academy. Next slide, please.
Medyo
Sorry,
matagal po, Director Jan.
yeah, baka naglalag sa
Nakalipat
end
na
ko.
po ba?
Hindi pa.
Hindi pa po pero na-next na po.
Next na ba? Hindi pa dito sa akin. Sorry, sige. Sandali lang ha. I'll just make some...
Okay na po, sir.
Wala pa pero sige lang, sandali
Wala pa po.
Wala pa siya sa akin. Ayun, okay. Nandito na. So under the same section, so ensure the presence of NEAP at the regional, division, district, and school levels for the effective implementation of PD programs, projects, and activities. At the moment, we have NEAP Central Office, and then we also have NEAP in the region. But we are seeing the very critical role of the division level NEAP, because at the end of the day, when you think of professional development of teachers, it doesn't have to be always at the central office level or the regional level. And we are seeing the role of the division, district, and school levels to be very critical for more effective PD for teachers. And then the third one, the secretary will have to determine the appropriate rank of the executive director in consultation with DBM and the Civil Service Commission. And then 18.2 refers to the structure of the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, again, giving the Secretary of Education the authority and the power to determine and establish the organizational structure as well as the staffing pattern of the organization. So for purposes of this IRR, the DepEd shall release a policy or an issuance policy or issuance that will establish the said organizational structure, the staffing complement, the qualifications, functions, and compensations in accordance with existing rules and regulations on and in consultation with the Department of Budget and Management and Civil Service Commission. So that's the first section. Section 19 refers to the powers and functions of the National Educators Academy of the Philippines. So here, the more specific functions are provided, and the IRR, some portions of those functions are also given more details. So can we go to the next slide, please?
Nakalipat na po, Director.
Ayan.
Nata-traffic lang po.
May lag lang talaga dito sa akin. So the first one is the collaboration, is to NEAP to collaborate with the Teacher Education Council to promote coherence and continuity between pre-service and in-service education and training. So there are this is the being the first function. No? It really emphasizes the importance of that connection between the pre-service and the in-service to make sure that teacher education and training will have some coherence and continuity. In other words, we know what the pre-service is doing, and we know how we will also proceed with the continuing education and training of our teachers. The second one is also a core function, the design and implementation of professional development programs to improve teaching expertise and effective school leadership over the course of a career in accordance with the professional standards. So for purposes of this IRR, NEAP shall design programs introducing innovations in the professional teaching practice, cognizant of local and international trends, and accompanying learning resources, including online formats and delivery modalities. Then develop the PD curriculum and PD medium-term plan for teachers and school leaders, and identify PD interventions to be designed, developed, and implemented. So in fact, the PD curriculum is already almost, it's almost done. It's just undergoing some refinements even as we speak. And then the third one, develop, collect, and benchmark models of best practices through research and benchmarking. Next slide, please. Then NEAP is also tasked to implement PD programs by applying the standards of program delivery and considering emerging trends in PD at scale for this purpose. And for this purpose, assess readiness for implementation. Provide continuing professional development to certified learning facilitators and assessors, content experts, trainers, coaches, and mentors for the delivery of programs. This is part of the quality assurance function of the National Educators Academy of the Philippines. And in fact, we have already started this, doing the certification for our learning facilitators. NEAP will also develop the mechanism and manage the participation of teachers and school leaders in recognized programs that are either free or subsidized, provided by non-DepEd learning service providers. So we are also doing this at the moment. We have non-DepEd learning service providers who are authorized by NEAP, and we also manage the participation of our teachers in those programs, especially those that are subsidized or the participation of teachers are subsidized or fully funded by NEAP. Next slide, please. Then the next provision is in relation to the collaboration of the NEAP with DepEd Central Office, Bureau Service Units, Regional and Schools Division Offices in planning, designing, and delivering, implementing professional development programs. NEAP cannot do this alone within DepEd. It has to always make sure that the other critical partners within DepEd central office curriculum requirements and so on, okay, should happen so that we will be able to support critically and strategically the implementation of the curriculum. And when I say curriculum, we're looking at the K to 12 and how it should be done, it should be implemented so that it will result in better learning outcomes and how we support the teacher professional development along that objective. Identify and collaborate with qualified PD partners. We are already doing this. We just need to refine some of our processes. Coordinate with relevant offices and units in the identification of PD programs that require partner participation. So all these are actually related to how we partner with relevant stakeholders. Given that we operate in a professional development ecosystem, so we do recognize that NEAP cannot do this alone. So we're looking at an ecosystem in the provision of professional development for teachers and school leaders. Next slide, please. Uh, 19.3, coordinate, oversee, and monitor the conduct of NEAP-recognized courses, seminars, workshops, and other PD programs provided by other DepEd bureaus, service, or units, and public or private universities, colleges, and training institutions. So this is now the monitoring and evaluation function of the National Educators Academy. So for purposes of this IRR, NEAP shall assure the quality of all professional development programs and courses through a mechanism that upholds the learning and development standards. So again, we based on our process, any program undergoes quality assurance through our recognition mechanism, and then we also monitor the implementation of these recognized programs. Because it's one thing to develop a design, and it's another thing to implement it. So we look at the implementation to see to it that and to ensure that whatever our providers and even NEAP, for that matter, whatever they promise in the design and in their implementation plan will have to be implemented according to that plan and according to the design. Of course, without necessarily saying that modifications cannot be done along the way, but we would like to see that substantially whatever the provider, okay, whether internal, whether that's NEAP or non-DepEd or within DepEd, they are able to substantially comply with the design that they submitted for recognition of their program. So we also do the formulation of policies and setting the standards of professional development activities developed and implemented at the school level, including but not limited to in-service training and learning action cells. So part of our job is to ensure that at the field level, the programs in relation to PD or training of teachers adhere to our policies and standards. So we also formulate, so that's part of the job of the National Educators Academy of the Philippines. Next slide, please. And then we also formulate a monitoring and evaluation framework for the conduct of NEAP-recognized professional development programs and courses. So part of the job, because as I said, there is a monitoring and evaluation function of the implementation of the program. So we also develop the framework for the conduct of these M&E activities. In fact, not just in the programs, but we also have a M&E framework for the entire NEAP, not just for the programs, but also for the other support programs that we are doing, because we also adhere to the framework of the Basic Education Development Plan. So there's a broader M&E framework in NEAP, and then there is a more specific M&E framework for the different professional development activities, programs, and courses. Next slide, please. If it's And then conduct research and evaluation of the effectiveness of the professional development programs provided under subparagraph 19.3. So inherent in the function of NEAP uh, is research on the effectiveness of the programs, so research and evaluation of the programs, so that we'll be able to also determine whether our programs are really making some impact in terms of one, competency development, and second, at the end of the road, it should be the learning outcomes for our learners. And then ensure equitable access to these professional development programs for teachers and school leaders. So for purposes of this IRR, NEAP shall lead in the formulation of policy to ensure that all teachers and school leaders will be able to have equal access and opportunity to participate. Of course, we are aware that even that our guiding principle is access, but I but of course, this is also subject to availability of resources. No? While it is our desire to make sure that everybody will have that provision of PD, no? But of course, we know that there can be some limiting factors like resources. So that's why the policy really also is to make sure that at the school level, at the very least at the school level, there is a very good mechanism for our local leaders to provide more responsive and more contextualized professional development for teachers, for teachers themselves. In fact, the Learning Action Cell, which is also covered by DepEd order, DepEd order number 15. The Learning Action Cell, I cannot recall the number, but the Learning Action Cell actually is a very good way to provide the teachers, and that is a very actually an equalizing strategy, for the access in terms of access of teachers to professional development. And then the next slide, there is a 19.6. 19.6 is a provision on scholarships and fellowships for our in-service teachers. We have started already offering internally for our scholarships for our teachers and school leaders. In the past, we were very dependent only on scholarships offered by partners like CIMEO, that's the CIMEO centers, scattered in the region. But last year we were able to already offer internally our own sort of scholarship programs for teachers. So we have PNU, who is handling the linking standards and quality practice program, where we have around 2,300 scholars in that program. And then we also have at the University of the Philippines. What we are seeing in the next few years will be, number one, the regionalization of these scholarships, knowing that there are centers of excellence, and hopefully in centers of excellence and centers of development in the regions, and hopefully working with the TEC, will be able to also identify and increase the number of these centers, so that we can effectively implement our more regionalized scholarships for postgraduate for graduate degree programs, as well as graduate certificate programs for those who are non-major. So in the immediate term, we would like to see the regionalization of our scholarships, having learned our lessons as well, from the implementation of our centrally managed scholarships with our partner universities. So and then in 19.7, ensure an effective link between the professional development of teachers and school leaders and other teaching related personnel with their career progression. This is the main this is one of the main motivations of the NEAP transformation, to ensure that there is a link between career progression and professional development. And that is also reflected in the curriculum that we have already prepared. Our curriculum identifies the the critical competencies for a particular career stage and identify the appropriate professional development interventions for that particular career stage so that we can move them to the next career or to the higher career stage or stages. So for this purpose, NEAP shall develop and maintain a professional development information system which shall contain the PD programs recognized by NEAP, the providers, and the list of in-service teachers and school leaders. So we are right now developing, in fact, that is already functional to us great extent. No, the professional development information system, which contains the professional development record of our teachers, where we will be able to keep track of the different programs the teachers already attend, and making sure that we are able to also see, on one hand, the professional development side, and on the other hand, their preparedness for career progression. So that the PDIS is going to do that so that we can have a more targeted programs for teachers whose needs will be identified better through the PDIS, or the Professional Development Information System. So for purposes of this IRR, we shall develop and maintain a PDIS that will capture all these data pertinent to professional development of our teachers. As I said, we have already started this, working on the professional development information system, which in fact is not just limited to the professional development record. No, we will make sure that the life cycle of a program is also, based on our process, is also captured. So from the, especially from the planning side to the development side to the recognition and to the implementation monitoring, and then the gathering of the records of the teachers from those programs so that we can input them in the PDIS. So we will also put in place a system of determining the credit units of our teachers that earned for their participation in the professional development programs. Sige. Next slide. Next slide. 19.8, strengthen collaboration with learning service providers and other stakeholders. As I said, we are looking at an ecosystem here when we talk of the provision of professional development, and that's important that we're able to collaborate with our partners. In the current office right now, we have a team that takes care of all the partnerships. So we actively seek partners, no? And then until we are able to make them commit to support our programs and policies. So yeah. So what I'm saying is we have already started doing this. And then 19.9, coordinate with PRC for the recognition or accreditation of its programs in compliance with the requirements for the continuing professional development. I think this is an ongoing partnership also with the PRC, and there are also other things that we're collaborating with them in order to facilitate the compliance. Sorry for the word. The compliance of our teachers with the PRC requirement for the renewal of their IDs, for their renewal of their professional identification cards. Next slide, please. Also, we collaborate with TEIs, and we have, again, we are also doing that in the collaboration with our TEIs for the delivery of their programs for teachers and other and school leaders and other teaching related personnel. And then this is again a unique, 19.11 is a little bit a sort of a unique provision. And then very specific provision on the charging of reasonable fees for the use of facilities for participation in professional development programs. So again, because our resources are really not infinite, because the government can only afford so much. So we need to also ensure that in certain aspects of our programs we can also charge reasonable fees. And all is one. Just would like to inform everyone that we have a training facility in Baguio. We call that the NEAP training facility at Baguio Teachers Camp, which hosts number of training programs as well. And then in the regions, there are also NEAP Rs or RELs before. No? They are called RELs before. Now they are called NEAP in the region. They are also the venue of the different training programs and under the management of the regional directors. And they also charge. They also charge. But now we are putting that already in the law so that it is more legal basis. No? As well as certain programs that are really, that cannot be funded adequately by the government. We will also, in the future, no? Right now, all the programs of NEAP are, in so far as public school teachers are concerned, are really free. Okay. But also because NEAP eventually will maybe, if it has the capacity already, can provide also for our non-DepEd teachers. And that's where this provision will come in handy. And then 19.12 manage the amount to be received from DepEd's appropriated budget, which shall be necessary to carry out its objectives, functions, operations. The 19.13 exercise such other powers and functions as may be necessary. And then the final provision for this rule is NEAP shall provide access to professional development programs for private school teachers, school leaders, and other teaching personnel, and may also extend scholarships and fellowships as may be deemed necessary. And for purposes of this IRR, NEAP shall collaborate with private basic education institutions through relevant units or offices in DepEd and establish networks of private education organizations. So I guess that's all for the functions of NEAP. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director John. Okay, so again, a virtual clap to the Director 4 of NEAP.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director John. Okay, so at this point, we will now continue the discussion. After the NEAP, we will have let us now proceed to the last part of the IRR. Rule 8, Rule 10 to Rule 13. So from sections 20 to 28. At this point, may we call in the tech zonal representative for Mindanao to present Rule 10 to Rule 13. Let's welcome Dr. Annabel J. Kasumpa.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Annabel J. Kasumpa, the Tech Zonal Representative for Mindanao, and I am assigned to present to you Rules 10 to 13 from Sections 20 to 28 of the RA 11713 IRR. Let me present to you my screen. Rule 10, Organizational Structure of the Teacher Education Council. Section 20, Creation of new items and transitory provisions. The personnel of the existing council shall, in a holdover capacity, continue to perform their respective duties and responsibilities until such time that the organizational structure and staffing pattern of the Secretariat shall have been approved, provided that the preparation and approval of the new organizational structure and staffing pattern shall, as far as practicable, respect and ensure the security of tenure and seniority rights of affected government employees. Within 3 months after the effectivity of the Act, the President, in consultation with the Secretary of the DepEd, appoint the regular members of the Council. The existing members of the Council shall serve in a holdover capacity until a full and permanent Council is constituted and functioning. Within 3 months after the appointment of the regular members of the Council, the chairperson of the Council shall, upon the concurrence of the other members, appoint the executive director of the Secretariat. Within 3 months after the effectivity of the Act, the Council shall submit the organizational structure, staffing pattern, and compensation schedule of the Secretariat to the DBM for funding. The existing personnel in the NEAP shall be transitioned to the organizational structure to be created by the Secretary of the DepEd. New items shall be created to augment the personnel complement of the NEAP in coordination with the DBM. The recruitment, selection, and hiring of new personnel shall be in accordance with Civil Service Commission rules and regulations on personnel action. Rule 11, Annual Report on the Status and Progress of Teacher Education and Teacher Quality. Section 21, Report to Congress. The Council shall submit to Congress on or before the 15th day of June of every year its report on the status and progress of teacher education and teacher quality in the country, as well as its recommendations in promoting quality education through teacher education. The report shall include the following topics pursuant to Section 20 of the Act. 21.1, Roadmap for Teacher Education and the regular progress thereon. 21.2, Issues and problems on teacher education and the solutions provided by the Council. And 21.3, Professionalization of the practice of teaching and the Council's initiatives to improve the same. The submission of the annual report required under this section shall commence 3 years from the constitution of the Council. Rule 12, Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Teacher Education. Section 22, Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Teacher Education. There is hereby created a Joint Congressional Oversight Committee, or the JCOC, on teacher education to oversee, monitor, and evaluate the implementation of this act. The GAOC shall be composed of 5 members, each from the Senate and the House of Representatives, with the chairpersons of the committees on basic education of both houses as co-chairpersons. The chairpersons of the committees on higher and technical education of both houses shall likewise be designated as members of the JCOC. the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the President of the Senate shall designate the other 3 members of the JCOC of the House and the Senate, respectively, from among the members of the Committees on Basic Education, 1 member of which shall be from the minority. Rule 13, the final provisions. Section 23, appropriations. The Secretary of Education shall immediately include in the DepEd's budget the amount necessary for the effective implementation of the Act, provided that on the 2nd year of implementation and thereafter, the Council, along with its Secretariat, shall have its own budget in the Annual General Appropriations Act as an attached agency of the DepEd. The budget of the NEAP shall continue to be part of the budget of the DepEd. For purposes of this IRR, the transfer of funds to the UNIFAS board for the implementation of TESP shall be governed by the relevant guidelines to be issued by the Council. Section 24, additional implementing details, policies, and guidelines. DepEd, the CHED, the TESDA, and the PRC shall, in consultation with relevant stakeholders, issue the necessary rules and regulations for its effective implementation. The IRR issued pursuant to this section shall take effect 30 days after its publication in a newspaper of general circulation. Section 25, amendments. Amendments to this IRR shall be issued by DepEd, CHED, TESDA, and the PRC in consultation with relevant stakeholders. Section 26, separability clause. If any provision or part of the Act is declared invalid or unconstitutional, the remaining parts not affected shall remain in full force and effect. Section 27, repealing clause. Republic Act number 7784 and all other laws, executive orders, presidential decrees, administrative orders, rules and regulations, issuances, or parts thereof inconsistent with or contrary to the provisions of the Act are hereby repealed or amended accordingly. Section 28, effectivity. This IRR shall take effect 15 days after its publication in the official gazette or in a newspaper of general circulation. This IRR shall be registered with the Office of the National Administrative Register, University of the Philippines Law Center, UP Diliman, Quezon City. Thank you so much. That ends my presentation for the rules assigned to me from 10 up to 13. Thank you so much. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, good day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kasumpa. Okay, we are done with the presentations of RA 11713, implementing rules and regulations. So we know that there are comments and suggestions that you want to share or you want to ask. So please key in your suggestions and comments in the chat box, or you may raise your hand to be recognized. So for our open forum, we will now proceed to our open forum. For our open forum, 2 of our tech subject representatives will facilitate the discussion. For our chat moderators, baka po mayroong mga suggestions from our viewers online, please forward it or please send it to our facilitators. So at this point, I am now giving the virtual floor to the facilitators of our open forum, our tech subject representatives for language and social studies, Dr. Jenny V. Hoxon and Dr. Archie B. Resos. So let's give them a virtual clap. Over to you, Ma'am Jen and Sir Archie.
Hello, naririnig niyo po ako?
Yes po.
Good afternoon, Ma'am Jenny. Good afternoon po.
Good afternoon. Go ahead, Sir Archie. I'm babackupan kita. Magandang
Yes,
hapon
ma'am.
po sa inyong lahat.
I just like to inform you, ma'am, that as of this point in time, in our DepEd Philippines Live, we have a total of 11,400 viewers po. Let us congratulate everyone, especially the TEC Secretariat, for the success of this public of this consultation of the Republic Act 1171-3. And then we have 77 attendees po dito po sa MS Teams. Maraming salamat po. Together with Dr. Jenny Hoxon po, we are the moderators for this open forum on this Republic Act 1171-3, or the Excellence in Teacher Education Act. We'd like to thank also the representatives from the public and the private sectors who participated in this consultation. If you have any forms of suggestions po, or recommendations, or queries, or any questions for clarificatory purposes, you may write it down in your chat box, or even in our live Facebook account. You may identify yourself and the institution where you came from. For your many suggestions or questions, we will accept that, no? So meron na po tayong isa dito, Ma'am Jenny, na question po na nakuha po natin from the chat box. Basahin ko na, Ma'am Jen, ano ho? Ang sabi po dito, coming from Sir John Adi Garcia from the De La Salle University. Ang question po niya, Section 16.2, okay, of the atin pong RA 1171-3, sabi po niya rito, what are the potential higher educational institutions? And then follow-up question, what is the rationale for giving them equal status as the teacher education institutions to be designated as Center of Excellence? Ayun, yun po ang tanong po niya. So, anyone po from... You can raise your hand so that you can be recognized po. If you have any questions. At yun po, yung atin pong tinanong po kanina. Before we go to Dr. Wilfredo po, may gusto pong sumagot dito sa atin pong what should be the potential higher education institutions, and what is the rationale for giving them equal status as TEIs to be designated as Center of Excellence? Yan po. Okay po, pwede po tayong sumagot.
Director Ranvi, would you like to respond to that query?
Yeah, my initial response for that is, I think there is no mention of higher education institution in the IRR. It's purely teacher education institution. So if there is a question on why, I think when in the IRR, it's very clear that the Center of Excellence is only for teacher education institution. Yeah, baka may dadagdag ka pa, Dr. Jen? Or Sir Archie?
Yes, salamat, Director. Thank you, Director Ranvi. In addition po, Dean Adi, ang batas po na ito ay para lamang sa teacher education institutions, ano? Para sa teacher education. Ibig sabihin, the Center of Excellence na ipapangalanan ng TEC at isasubmit sa CHED ay para sa teacher education institution, colleges, no, at saka sa inyong mga programa. Other programs other than teacher education, may ibang parametro para sila ay maging Center of Excellence, ano? Iba-ibang programa po 'yon at nakay CHED po 'yon. So it's only the teacher education programs ang para po sa TEC. Salamat. Thank you, Sir Archie.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jan. I hope that answers the query of
Can I make a
Dr. Jan Adi Garcia.
I think yung mali yung na-type ko. It should be the term in the document is potential TEIs. I just want to be clarified what's the definition of a potential TEI and why is it, because the provision says the potential TEIs can be conferred the status of COE as well. So I wanted to understand what a potential TEI is. That's what I read in the document that has been. It should have been TEI, not HEI. Sorry for that mistake. Thank you.
Ayun po, what is the potential TEIs, hindi po yung HEIs, to be designated as COEs?
Maybe the Secretariat could show that provision of the law.
Yes po, Ma'am Jen.
Pwede ba nating ipakita yung provision na yon para mas malinaw nating masagot si Dean?
Salamat, Doc Jen. Hindi ko rin alam
Hi,
kung
Dean.
maliwanag yung ba.
Tingnan po natin.
Sa part po ng potential
16.
HTEIs.
16.2.
Wait lang po.
All right, so 16.2, CHED shall provide a council and annual report on the status and performance of all TEIs in the implementation of teacher education program. Dean Adi, could you show us please which line ang query natin dito?
I cannot see anything on my screen. I think it's the fourth or fifth line.
So line 20, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 18.
No.
Performance of students,
Sorry,
potential
TEI.
potential TIs which the council may designate. All right. Din Adi, the context of the potential TIs, that phrase refers to any TI which may be designated as COE, a Center for Excellence. No? So just a description po.
All right.
Just that phrase. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Jenny. I think I missed the comma. Now I understand it. Thank you.
Okay, for our next question. Pasensya na kung hindi ko makita yung naka-raise ng hands. Ayun po, Dr. Wilfredo Hermosura. Dr. Wilfredo Hermosura po.
Hi, Doc Jen, Doc Archie. Good afternoon po.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Wilfredo Hermosura, the Dean of the College of Education, Arts and Sciences, Silay Institute, Province of Negros Occidental, Region 6. Kompleto talaga. Considering that this is a consultation, my attention was caught by the presentation of Dr. Filina Ispique, our zonal representative for Luzon, which she mentioned about para teachers. That should there be a need for, because in her presentation there was no definition of I understand the examination, but for purposes of the discussion, she mentioned about para teachers, that in case we lack teachers who are qualified, that would mean that they are passers of the licensure examination for teachers. The TEIs can get hold of the para teachers, and we know that para teachers are non-passers of the licensure examinations for teachers. Allowed pa ba ang para teachers? Kasi parang nababahala ako, kasi the fact that I am not saying that they are not good, but what I'm saying is they did not pass the exams. But we know that when you pass the exams, you automatically qualify para bang the exceptional abilities have been parang may tatak ka na kasi license ka. Pwede pa ba ang para-teacher na i-hire natin, Ma'am Doc Bear?
Parang nasa definition of terms lang po
Oo,
yun.
parang sa definition ata yun. Definition ng para-teacher natin. Kasi I understand kasi para-teacher refers to, when alam na natin yan, at before, ang nag-hire sa kanila, funded by the city government. Kaya inalis ata yan ng DepEd, pagkakaalam ko, ibabalik pa ba natin? So there was a mention only in the definition, it did not say that it shall be included, but I would also say that the fact that it was defined, then there is a possibility that they be included. Should there be a shortage of the lead passers? Para teacher. Yan. 5.9 the So my question actually, Doc Fel, is that considering that para-teachers are included in the definition, does it mean to say that in the shortage of the licensure exam for teachers qualifiers, they shall be included in the roster of those who will teach?
Maybe we can ask Dr. Para or Dr. Lucido to define this for us, the para teachers.
Hello, yeah. Dr. Hilon, are you there?
Good afternoon, Doc.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Dr. Lucido.
Yes, Doc.
You're asking for the definition of the para teachers. As stated there, the para teachers are hired in the areas where there is really a shortage of teachers, basic areas. But as it's stated there, but so far I don't remember that it really has applied for permit to us, because it's really up for DepEd if they want to hire these teachers who are not like or who are not licensed, or have not passed the board exam. But that is the law says, those who has the licensure exam can qualify to teach. So they like to hire these teachers. I remember, I think there were areas where, especially in the beginning implementation of the K-12, they were given 5 years. It's similar, to that status of those who were made to teach the senior high, but that they don't possess the licensure needed, the LET or the license. So they were given 5 years. But this one, para teachers are really hired by DepEd. That's why we have to ask DepEd if they're still hiring these para teachers. I don't think there's really right now with the number, the supply of teachers, that there is shortage of teachers. Dr. Jenny?
There is a comment here coming from Dr. Joel Javiñar of the UP College of Education. This provision on para teachers is acknowledged by this law, and an IRR is necessary to regulate its implementation.
Okay.
That comes from Dr. Joel Javiñar.
Yeah. The mere
That's
fact
great.
that they have included this definition of para teachers, so it's part of the law. So maybe there is a need, I agree with him, to really come up with an IRR on how to define this, para teachers. Because, of course, there is, I don't think the RA 7836 that is still existing, you know, only applies to those who pass the licensure exam. It mentioned here of the para teachers, instead, it's part of the law.
Doc?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, my focus is that um, these are definitions specifically on 5.9. The fact that it was included as a definition, there is a possibility that the IRR would include, if in case there is a shortage of the left passers, including to teach in the teacher education institutions, the para teachers. So my apprehension was, would we accommodate them in the teacher education institutions, the fact that they are not passers yet? At bakit inilagay dito si para teacher na alam naman natin na hindi siya nakapasa? Not undermining definitely, of course, their capabilities. But since we talk about exceptional abilities, well, maybe they have exceptional abilities. But ang tumatatak lang talaga sa isip ko is, it should be a passer. Parang ganun. So why include a para teacher
Yeah.
in the definition?
Well,
Those are just my thoughts,
yes,
Dr.
yes. I remember that the first time they used para teachers, this was still during the passage of the RA 7836, the first time it was passed. And that there were really teachers who were not able to pass the left. And yet they were there, no? Maybe because of tenure or what, and specialization. So they were allowed to practice, to stay. But in PRC, we also have some provisions as with regard to giving them the license without taking the licensure exam. But I don't think this refers to para teachers. So
Dean Hermosura.
Yes,
Sir,
Doc.
we will take note of your comments, sir. We're going back to the original the law, no, the provision of the law. We'll take it. We'll have it noted, and then we'll respond to you before the end of the session. Ano, sir? Ano, hanapin lang namin sa mismong provision saan siya ginagamit. But the wisdom of the law could be that currently there are still para teachers available. We may not be accepting them anymore, but there are still para teachers, no, within the DepEd realm, no. Baka po 'yun ang ibig sabihin. So we'll get back to you, sir, before the end of the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Noted po.
Hindi ko marinig masyado. We have another question coming from Brenda Corpus. Ma'am, you are acknowledged.
Actually, I wanted to say something about para teachers.
Yes, ma'am.
The amendment to Republic Act 7836, in particular Republic Act 9293, talks about para teachers. And as to up to this moment, there are para teachers because 9293 allows so. These are assigned to places where there are no applicants, qualified applicants, as identified by the Department of Education in coordination with the professional board as defined in 9293. So they are still there.
Okay, so we have a response in the chat box. coming from Attorney Joyce of PRC.
I
The
think si
definition,
Attorney Joyce.
opo, the
Si
definition
Attorney
was already given in RA 1171.3. So it is but natural that it be contained in the IRR. If we want to question the inclusion thereof, we are in effect questioning the constitutionality of the law. If Attorney Joyce of TESDA is around, you may give us your comments on this, ma'am. You are acknowledged now. Attorney Joyce from TESDA, are you around, ma'am? Attorney?
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon po.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, sir. If I may be allowed to comment on this, actually, upon raising the question, I actually went to the original phraseology of the law and the IRR that we worked na pinagtrabaho natin before, and I noticed that we just copied the definition of it. So, yeah, I placed the comment because since the definition was already given under RA 11713, if we are actually questioning the validity of the inclusion of this definition in the IRR, in effect, we are actually questioning the constitutionality of the law and maybe treated in a different session. But for the purposes of the IRR, we are still within the parameters of the act of putting the definition lifted from the law itself is within the IRR itself. Parang ano po siya, pwede po siyang gawin. Since it was actually copied, I believe if we have apprehensions regarding dito, maybe we can take note of it. But as regards the definition, it was lifted from the law itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney. Next we have po si Ma'am Therese Peña from PIBED. You are acknowledged now, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you are acknowledged.
Okay po. Thank you po. So I would like to raise a question po on section 9 of the IRR regarding the powers and functions of the council. Specifically po sa pag-establish po ng roadmap for teacher education. I would just like to ask po what would be the content or ano po ang titingnan ng roadmap na i-publish or na isa-submit po, Ched, because we have a few recommendations lang po sa roadmap na iyon. So I'd just like to ask po kung ano ang ilalaman po muna ng roadmap na iyon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, anyone po for the content of the roadmap?
Hi, Sir Archie.
Hello
Medyo
po.
hindi ko narinig ang kabuuan ng tanong. If I'm correct, ang tanong po ba ay ano ang laman ng roadmap? Tama po ba?
Opo.
Yes
correct.
po, ma'am. Yes po.
Hi. That is something that the council will develop together with the council together with its other stakeholders. The idea is that magkaroon ng iisang tahakin ang lahat ng teacher education institutions in the country by having that roadmap, no? So ang CHED naman po ay nagde-develop din ng roadmap for all other programs, right? Or for all other higher ed programs. Pero para sa TEC po, is the roadmap for teacher education that may include programs in the future or pare-pareho nating gagawin, directions towards, say, a 10-year development perspective, maaaring yun po ang maging laman ng roadmap. The law in the IRR did not definitively define it to allow the council to have its own understanding, no, and its own perspective in the development of the roadmap.
Hello po, may I reply po?
Yes, ma'am. Sige po.
Okay po. Yung suggestions po sana namin sa roadmap na ito is to have a 5-year projection sana of yung mga needs ng provinces or ng mga subject areas for more teaching staff. Ang hugot namin po dito is that there are a lot of what do you call this, teacher education students na nahihirapan sa pagpili na kung anong subject area po ang kailangan ang tatahakin nila na kailangan din ng kanilang probinsya, especially considering yung localization policy wherein dadalhin po sila sa mga probinsya nila or mga malalapit na area. Tapos pagdating nila doon, hindi pala kailangan or hindi pa need ang kanilang subject area na inaral nila sa college. So gusto lang po namin na malaman kung sa roadmap ba ito, malalaman po ba kung ano yung mga areas, for example, na kulang sa teachers, or ano ang mga subject areas that also need more teachers in those provinces. Just so that ma-fill in po yung mga deficiencies na nakikita natin ngayon sa grassroots. Another thing na gusto namin pong isuggest sa roadmap na ito is baka din po pwedeng i-recommend sa roadmap na ito kung ilan ang kailangan na non-teaching staff per province. So yung suggestion po namin all in all is to see a projection of ilan ang mga kailangang teachers sa isang probinsya, ilan ang kailangan na teachers sa isang subject sa isang probinsya, and also kung ilang non-teaching staff ang kailangan, just so that mas madali din po para sa mga magiging estudyante or mga magiging lisensyadong teacher sa kung anong kailangan nilang focus or kung anong kailangan nilang pag-aralan po na specialization. I hope that's clear po, or sana po pwede itong ilagay din specifically sa IRR para din mas malinaw din kung ano ang makikita sa roadmap or anong kailangang hanapin pa. Yun lang po.
Thank you so much for the suggestions, ma'am. And then we are going to note that po na lang. Maraming salamat po. Before anything else, I would like to acknowledge sana po yung presence po ni Dr. Brenda for question or suggestion, ma'am. You are acknowledged now.
Actually, I already wrote and forwarded my
okay po.
questions. Yeah, but my question is, maybe I'll say it here. One
Yes,
was
ma'am.
on something on 9 point, I don't remember the exact number, 9.3, where the tech will lead in the development of the program, curriculum, teacher education program curriculum, so on. So my question there was, where is CHED in the function? And then the second question I raised was on the suggestion that NC, National Certificate, be a requirement for the taking of the licensure exams for teachers, because I know that the Republic Act 7836, the Teachers Professionalization Act, already has identified the qualification of LET examinees, and adding an NC as a qualification for the LET, I think is beyond the law 7836. Those are my observations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we proceed to Dr. Joel, let me just read a comment here from Forsefina Frias regarding the para-teachers, yung question kanina. As I recall, the hiring of the para-volunteers or the para-teachers in kindergarten then was suspended due to many issues arising in terms of the rights of compensation, since they were only paid 3,000 per session. Then, per DBM deliberations, no provisions or circular issued as to how much the rate of salary to be received by a para or a volunteer teachers. Ayun po. Maraming salamat po. Gusto ko rin po sanang i-acknowledge po na ibigay po ang floor ngayon kay Dr. Para Hiron po. Maraming salamat po. Dr. Hiron, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for acknowledging
Yes, ma'am.
and acknowledging my presence.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would like to say something about road mapping. There was a question on, there was a suggestion coming from one of our participants from TESDA, attorney. She's a lawyer from TESDA. And she said that I agree with her. I concur with her idea that there must be a focus on the roadmap that will be prepared or formulated. And one of the important considerations in the creation of the roadmap, because road mapping is akin to strategic planning, is situational analysis. And it's there in situational analysis where what will be brought out are the needs of the community. So if the school is in the area serving a catchment area where there is a need for example, in a fishing village, then there is a need for more students who should major in agriculture and fish arts, or in the farm, then there should be also the AFA. And in industries where we have what you call TechVox. So what will come out will be some data or statistics pertaining to the community. Therefore, the roadmap will be very much relevant, and relevant in the sense that other data would be needed pertaining to what kind of specialization will the students be engaged in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Sorry po, Sir Joel, you are acknowledged po. The virtual floor is yours right now.
So magandang hapon po sa lahat, at congratulations unang-una sa mga nag-frame nitong IRR na ito. Ang mga suggestion lang siguro, unang-una, dahil kanina nabanggit na yung mga parang incoherence of the law with some other laws. Mahirap na magkaroon tayo ng conflict between two laws na in operation ngayon, like 7836 on the qualifications of those who would take the LET. Tapos ngayon sa IRR natin, which is actually not in the law, pero sa IRR meron, on the NC, nabanggit na yan kanina ni Dr. Brenda. So isa yon. So kaya kailangan siguro balikan yung mga dating batas, even yung 10836, kasi sa senior high school meron din ganoon. Kailangan balikan din yun. Baka kasi mamaya hindi naman pala siya intent ng batas, naguluhin yung mga dating batas, ay dahilan sa dun sa ating binibigay ngayon na implementing rules and regulations, ay baka ma-overwhelm naman tayo. So isa yon. So kailangan siguro merong fresh eyes na tumingin dun sa mga batas na ito ng dati at ibangga dun sa IRR ngayon. So isa po yung parang suggestion. And that relates to the para-teacher. Kanina nabanggit na yung bakit siya hindi tinuloy. Pero yun nga, dahil nasa batas siya ngayon as part of the definition of terms, kailangan sa IRRs, may binanggit ako dyan sa section 8, section 8 nga ba yun? O yung basta yung tungkol dun sa function ng Teacher Education Council to uphold the competency requirements, no? So pwedeng doon siya ipasok. So paano ngayon yung IRR ng para teachers? Will we subscribe to that para teachers pa rin? So atas kung magsusubscribe tayo because binigay ng batas ngayon, hanggang kailan? May prescriptive period ba, just as the way we implemented RA 7836 in the past, no? So noong 90s. So 5 taon bago dumating yung panahon na yon, dapat magkaroon ka na ng license. So pwedeng balikan po yon. So yon. So, doon sa para teachers na yon. Kasi hindi nga pwedeng hindi i-regulate. Nandyan siya sa batas. So we need an IRR to regulate. So yun naman din talaga ang dahilan bakit mayroong implementing rules and regulations, di po ba? So hindi ko mo nabanggit sa batas, na merong para teachers ay freewheeling na, no? Kahit ano na, mas keep-ups na pwede. Hindi. Kailangan i-regulate natin siya. Hanggang kailan, o even in compensation na binabanggit, napakagandang pag-aralan yun. Baka nga mamaya, yung mga nasa kindergarten, dahil wala naman talagang specialization at that time na nagkaroon tayo ng batas noon, ay kawawa naman yung magiging volunteer teachers, no? Para teachers natin. So yun po. Siguro isama nyo na rin yung idea ng road mapping, yung research, tapos yung mga complementary reports. Kasi parang lumalabas po, parang hiwa-hiwalay siya. Pero pwede naman pala siya magkaroon ng coherent form or framework. So pwede naman pala. Like halimbawa yung idea natin ng meron nakalagay dyan on National Research Agenda. Baka naman pwedeng kasi we're looking into localization at nabanggit nga kanina yung kumuha sila ng ng degree course tapos pagdating nila sa probinsya nila, hindi naman pala kailangan. So where will localization be placed into the law, in the IRR? Not in the law kasi nandiyan na yan. So yung IRR. So yun po. And then, ako'y talagang gigis po dito sa local government na ito, no? So ang dami mga pwedeng gawin, okay? So Rule 8, Section 17 po yata, yung nakalagay dun sa batas. Pero kinopya lang natin yung IRR. Pero maganda siguro, yung sa IRR, kinopya lang natin yung nasa batas. Maganda siguro, baka naman pwede i-regulate din yung mga local government na yan. So baka naman pwedeng bigyan ng semblance of quality assurance. Hindi yung puro sports activities na lang ang ilalagay nila para sa paggamit ng special education fund. Baka naman pwedeng magkaroon ng mas mataas na level ng paggamit ng mga pondo. Nandiyan ang NEAP, baka yung NEAP pwedeng maging source ng ng funds kasi nga it's not infinite, sabi ni Dr. Shena kanina, no? Baka naman pwedeng yung local government would have a linkage with the TEC, the NEAP, on how teachers in the area could be equipped with quality and excellent curriculum skills, pedagogy, etc. So yun po. So pinag-iisipan ko po yan paano magagamit ng local school board ang mga reports, yung mga roadmaps, yung mga research agenda. Okay? At sana yung local school board natin ay headed by the mayor and the yung ating usually superintendents, sana naman hindi maging yes man lang si ma'am o si sir kay mayor sana naman i-push talaga kung ano yung gusto ng quality assurance ng NEA for teachers to have that excellence in content and pedagogy. So yun po yun lang man po sa ngayon. Maraming salamat po. Ako po si Joel Labinyar ng UP College of Education.
Thank you so much po, Dr. Joel, sa very comprehensive po na inyong suggestion. Napakahusay po. Huwag kayong mag-alala po. We will consider this sa konseho. Coherence of all this research, including the roadmap po and complementary reports, and also to regulate the LGUs. Maraming salamat po. Napakalaking tulong po, Doc, sa amin po sa konseho ang lahat po ng napakagandang suggestion nyo po. Maraming salamat po, Doc. At ganyan din naman po, salamat po, Doc, sa pagbati. Meron pa po yatang tanong din naman po si Sir Wilfredo. Sir, you are acknowledged, Sir Wilfredo.
Sir, good afternoon again.
Yes, sir.
Actually, wala naman akong tanong, sir, na tapos naman ni Doc Joel. Kaya ang sa akin lang totoo yun. Kasi parang there is some non-synchronicity of the para-teacher. Babalik ako doon sa para-teacher. Maka-defunk na yun kasi pagkakaalam ko, he mentioned about the amount which is not exactly the same in the payment in connection with the funding given by the special education fund and the local school board led by the mayor and the superintendents. Ang sa akin lang, I think I am proposing to the committee to go over it again find out
Ina,
what are the other laws, which are in contrary and still active and are not active para sa IRR natin po. Maraming salamat po, sir.
Thank you so much po, Sir Wilfredo. Lahat po ay ginajot down na tinitake into consideration po namin sapagkat wala po kaming monopoly po ng karunungan and knowledge, and we are also learning a lot from you po, sir. At maraming salamat po sa inyo ni Sir Joel po, Sir Wilfredo.
Salamat din po,
Thank
sir.
you so much po. Gayun din naman po, meron pa rin tayong question po coming from Ma'am Therese. Ma'am, you are acknowledged, Ma'am Therese Peña.
Yes po, thank you po. I'll say my 2 questions na po para po isahan na lang po. I'd go back po to the powers and functions of the council, specifically sa strengthening the link between pre-service and in-service teacher education programs. I think that's 9.2 po. Opo, yung collaborating with relevant government agencies including the NEAP. Ang tanong ko lang po dito is ano po yung magiging mechanism or like paano ba magpaplano ng, for example, ng mga bagong curriculum maybe, or yung pag-revise ng mga teacher education curriculum this time around, kasama na po dito yung malalagay din sa IRR. Because so far ang nakalagay sa IRR is magtutulungan po for example, I guess yung council and yung NEAP. However, I think kailangan din ng malaking role din ng CHED because sila din naman po ang mag-i-implement ng ng teacher education curriculum na yon. That's my first question. Tapos may suggestions din po kami for that one. Thank you.
Okay, sino pong sasagot po sa mechanism po for teacher education curriculum po na tinanong po ni Ma'am Therese? Anyone po from our panel?
Sir Archie, sasagutin ko po.
Salamat, ma'am. Sige po.
Ma'am, the CHED po sits in the council. There are only 4 main government agencies that sits in the council, no? DepEd, CHED, TESDA, NCCA. So, NPRC. So, nakaupo na po talaga sila doon. Talaga pong sila na magdedirekta ng mga ganitong konsepto when it comes to the pre-service curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
May I
ma'am.
reply po?
Yes, ma'am. Your suggestion, ma'am.
Okay po. We would like to suggest po sana 2 things. So number 1 po sana is an annual nationwide survey for all teaching staff regarding yung pre-service and yung in-service teacher education programs. Kasi po, we think na kailangan po din naman talaga ng consultation pa rin, nationwide consultation, more regularly with yung current na teaching staff natin and yung mga estudyante po regarding po sa, for example, accessibility ng mga in-service trainings in their division and region, pati po yung quality and enrichment of the in-service training, and also the applicability and effectiveness ng mga training na ito sa mga current na strategies nila or yung manner of pedagogy nila pagdating nila sa pagtuturo mismo. Yung point lang namin dito sa unang suggestion namin is that we want more regular consultations with all of the teaching staff and all of, hopefully, ng mga estudyante din po ng teacher education para din mas maging complementary siya sa mga inaaral nila at saka rin para maging mas needs-based din ang curriculum ngayon na magkakaroon din ng council na tutugon po sa ganitong sitwasyon. Yung second suggestion po namin sana is that yung pag-create po ng curriculum sana, it would be in line with unang-una yung roadmap na mention po namin a while ago, and nag-concur din yung TESDA and UP College of Education na sana po it has more data with regards sa mga deficiencies sa mga regions or mga subject areas. At the same time, sana din po kasama ang ganitong survey sa paggawa ng curriculum na ito. So my further question lang po sana is are there already efforts sa maybe revise or pag-amend ng mga current teacher education curricula for this time po for the IRR?
Okay, are there efforts to revise or the teacher education curricula?
Maybe our friends from chat could respond to that.
Are there efforts to revise the teacher education curriculum po on the part of the Commission on Higher Education representatives? Wala po yata tayong representative sa CHED.
Sir, kung okay lang po, I'll just go na lang to my next question. Baka, ninonote nyo naman ata. Okay lang po ba?
Sige po, ma'am. Sige po. Thank you so
Okay
much, ma'am.
My next question po sana is with regards po sa, what do you call this? Yung Student Incentive Office. My question po here is that will there be local na student incentives and support offices, especially po sa pag-implement ng scholarship program? Because I referred po din to the Doctor Para sa Bayan scholarship po, wherein yung DOH per region is very active when it comes to yung pag-promote and yung paglaganap ng scholarship nila para sa mga medical students. And it works because may mga local offices or designated offices natutugon po sa mga concerns or maybe sa pag-implement mismo ng scholarship para sa mga medical students. I wanted to ask po if yung Student Incentives and Support Office will be the same, na may local offices maybe per region or maybe per SDO, para rin mas magiging madali ang pag-establish ng mga ganitong scholarship programs, and para po mas pwedeng tutukan ang mga possible scholars po nito. Because if ever may mga suggestions din ulit kami. Thank you.
Okay, are there students incentive support offices po in the local level? Anyone from the panel?
Yeah, good afternoon, Dr. Archie.
Yes, sir, Randy, Doctor.
Yeah.
Randy.
I think in the law it says that there is an office that takes charge of the scholarship. We call that office as Student Incentive Support Office, but it's in the TEC, parang it's a national office, but we continuously coordinate. We are organizing an interagency, although we are still conceptualizing to organize tech region, so that will address your particular concern. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Ma'am Therese.
Yes po, thank you po. Because I think that would really help po para sa mga estudyante mismo, kasi medyo mahirap kapag yung mga concerns nila regarding sa scholarship pupunta pa sa national, when mas madali po sana kung meron na silang kausap sa local na mismo for their incentives or yung mga scholarship queries nila.
In addition, ma'am, I think the scholarship is, for example, is lodged to the colleges and universities in the different regions. And there is also, institutionalized a mentoring program for the students. So it means the colleges and universities, our partner colleges and universities in the region, will help us in making sure that our scholars will be attended to in terms of their needs.
Opo. Thank you po for that one po. Nanote ko din naman po. I guess an additional question to that po is, para po sa mga mentors, I know this will be like an extra workload din po para sa kanila, because I'm sure na yung mga mentors na ito, mga guro din po sila sa mga TEIs na to. Will there be like certain allowances or maybe an incentive po sa pagiging mentor? Because for our institution, Philippine Business for Education, we also did our own scholarship program for teacher education students, which we've shared po with the TEC Secretariat. But yung naging isang concern lang po is that yung mga mentors po, parang dumagdag nga yung load nila because while they are also teaching, they also have to focus din sa mga scholars. They also have to see kung kamusta yung academic performance nila or kung may mga socio-economic concerns sila. So parang nagiging dagdag nga sa current na responsibilities nila. So are there any remedies para maging mas madali po or maybe mas maging incentivized po ang pagiging mentor po sa mga grantees ng scholarship?
Yeah, I think, ma'am, we'll look into that because we'll still come up with the policy on the mentoring policy. We'll include that in the mentoring policy. Of course, we also have to incentivize the mentors because it also provides them additional. They have to give and provide additional time for our scholars. I think isasama yan sa ating gagawing pulisiya.
Okay po. Thank you po. I guess last question po. Sorry po, ang dami po mga tanong. Pero ang last question po is...
Ma'am Therese, will it be okay po because we only have until 2:45 and as I am moderator, I have to regulate po. We will accept your questions po and you can basically email the questions or send it through us, through our representatives because I was only given around 2:45. So if it's okay, ma'am, pasensya na po, ma'am, ha?
Opo, no problem po.
Opo, kasi I have to distribute then. May isang last na lang ito ho na question po coming from David Lee. Ang tanong po niya, can scholarships be availed by private institutions and how? Ayun po. Can scholarships be availed by private institutions and how? Sa atin po mga representatives, naririto po. Panel natin.
Po. Yeah, sige ma. Sige sir. Siyempre binubuo pa po natin yung TEC. Of course, in the coming years, we'll be organizing different offices and one of the offices is the one I mentioned for a scholarship. So lahat siguro po it's good that we have these suggestions coming from the public so that we'll factor in all your suggestions in the offices that we will be organizing in the coming years. Lahat po yon i-factor in namin. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Director Ranvi. And in as much really as I would like to accommodate po all your suggestions and questions, recommendations, comments, queries, we don't have much time. I'm very sorry to tell you. And that would wrap up our open forum for today. Sana po naunawaan niyo po kayo, huwag kayong magagalit sa akin kasi I have to moderate and control po the time. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng nag-participate po, lalong-lalo na doon po sa mga representatives natin from the public and the private sector. Mabuhay po tayong lahat sa success po ng atin pong Public Consultation of Republic Act 1171-3. Which means the Excellence in Teacher Education Act. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Ayun. Maraming salamat po, Sir Archie. So, bigyan naman natin ng masigabong palakpakan ng ating facilitator, Dr. Jenny Hoxon and Dr. Archie B. Resos. Ayun. So, maraming salamat po. And also sa atin pong mga TWG na present, mga sumagot po, nag-share, and also sa ating mga tech members. Maraming salamat po. Okay, so once again, thank you very much, Dr. Hoxon and Dr. Resos, for facilitating our open forum. And to those who raised questions, offered suggestions, and comments, noted pong lahat yun. Indeed, your suggestions and comments were significant, and they were all noted po. So we will bring all this to the finalization write-shop this coming September 29 to 30. So lahat po ng mga nakalagay sa chat box, may mga questions pa pong hindi na namin nabasa, hindi na nabasa kanina ni Sir Archie, noted pong lahat yon. Okay po? So once again, thank you very much for your participation and for watching and tuning in during this RA 11713 IRR Public Consultation. May I invite everyone po to please open your camera for our photo opportunity. Ayan. Stop sharing na siguro tayo. Then, photo op tayong lahat.
So, dalawa tayo.
Dalawa tayo, Director. Ayan. So, may we ask po the Secretariat, please capture po yung ating mga okay na po. Ayun. So, capture na pong lahat. So, once again, please don't forget to leave us your evaluation of this activity by accessing this link posted on screen as well as on the chat box. So, please, yung ating technical team, the Secretariat, please post po yung ating evaluation link sa ating chat box. Konti na lang yung mga naka-camera on. Okay na po. Naka-post na po ba yung ating evaluation link? Okay, so to give us the ways forward of this endeavor, may I call in once again the Tech Zonal Representative for Visayas, Dr. Justoni P. Babia. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon once again. Education Council. I wish to thank all of you, our dear friends and our esteemed colleagues in the teaching profession, for your active participation in our national consultation in the draft IRR of RA 11713. It is our hope in the Council that we will all work together to foster an environment that will create effective teaching and at the same time a learning culture that will develop enthusiastic and independent learners who are committed to lifelong learning. To shed light on the direction of the Teacher Education Council in the next coming days and years, allow me to present to you our ways forward. But before presenting the ways forward, allow me as well to present to you the very rationale why this Excellence in Teacher Education Act was created. We all know that it is declared policy of the state to protect and promote the right of all citizens to quality education at all levels, and that the state will take appropriate steps to make such education accessible to all. It is also universally accepted that the teacher is the key to the effective teaching and learning process in order to produce learners who are at the same time human beings worthy to become members of our society. And the state also further recognize the role of the different school leaders in creating and in making sure that they will embrace the experience, improving their leadership capacities, and to produce teachers as well, enhancing the quality of education, making sure that the teachers have the adept training nationwide. And with all these, in achieving and improving and capacitating leaders and making sure that our teachers will achieve the right competencies in order to produce learners who are committed to lifelong learning, we are glad that RA 11713 was designed to further strengthen the Teacher Education Council in the Philippines. And we also know that on top of strengthening the Teacher Education Council in the Philippines, this particular law will establish a scholarship program for students in the teacher education and will also institutionalize the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, and at the same time to establish the centers of excellence in different places in the country. And in order to achieve this, the Teacher Education Council is willing to put forward the next steps by presenting this IRR to the different Teacher Education Council members, and to ensure that this IRR will be signed by October, and that this will also be disseminated to all other teacher education institutions in the country. And at the same time, to conduct the annual Center of Excellence Convention, focusing on policy formulation and enhancements based on the new RA 11713. And with that, the Teacher Education Council is also committed to achieve its 10-point agenda, making sure that everyone is really enthusiastic and is really in want to create more generative and collaborative transformation to achieve and create competent, productive, and dynamic individuals and citizens of the country and in the world. And therefore, the Teacher Education Council commits to grow communities across the land, making sure that communities have different roles to play and that they will recognize their respective efforts and at the same time their important roles in contributing to the growing needs of education in the times. The Teacher Education Council is also committed to reach beyond the grasp through generative partnership and at the same time to strengthen the teachers' lifelong learning experience through pre-service training. The Teacher Education Council also commits to transform the teaching practices through the digitization based on the concepts of the Fourth Industrial Revolution leading to the Fifth Industrial Revolution, and innovate teaching for delightful and engaging learning, making sure that our learners will also commit to transfer the learning not just to the four walls of the classroom, but making this learning more meaningful to their lives and towards the the contribution to the learning intensive society. The Teacher Education Council also commits to align graduate curricula, the standards and the qualifications, and build incentives and recognition system to produce top caliber teacher professionals. And this will only be ensured if we will also be creating a nurturing organizational environment and at the same time establishing a comprehensive database on teachers and their development, and at the same time, the creation of the Knowledge Management Center for Teachers. All these direction of the Teacher Education Council is geared in the pursuit of establishing a more committed, a more integral formation for teachers and for our school leaders so that in turn we can create a more responsible learners that will build and will help create a future that we all deserve. And with that, I'd like to encourage you that we will all collaborate as education professionals to assist our learners to become responsible, competent, and productive individuals and citizens of the Philippines and the world. Again, maraming salamat po sa inyo and mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Ay. Okay, dagang kaayong salamat, Dr. Babia. So once again, thank you very much all for those who participated in this public consultation. So muli po, maraming salamat sa lahat po ng COEs and CODs across regions, sa atin pong mga TEIs across the country, all the representatives from SACTEA, PAFTE, 3NS, PAS, PESPA, NASP, Unifast, PAASCO, PACUCOA, AXCO, ACI, from PAPSCO, COCOPEA, PIBED, TDC, AC, Alliance Teachers of the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, from DOST, from our DepEd TWG, from BCD, BLD, BEA, Legis, Legal, Planning, BHROD, NEAP, sana lahat nabanggit ko. To our tech regular members, our zonal representatives, subject representatives, and also our ex-officio members. And also, syempre, hindi ito mabubuo ito, our technical team from ICTS, USD, and also from PAS. Maraming salamat po. So, again, ano ho ba masasabi namin? So, maraming salamat po sa lahat. Muchas gracias a todos. Okay po, so 1 minute, tatapos natin ang ating 3 o'clock na po. So, as scheduled, we will end our activity by 3 o'clock. So, once again, maraming salamat for participating po dito sa ating public consultation ng RA 11713 IRR. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is Donabel Bihasa from Teacher Education Council Secretariat signing off. Okay po. So we will be closing the platform po in 2 minutes. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you po.
30 seconds na lang daw pala.
Thank you po.
Thank you very much po.
Taraos tayo.